Dr. Gandhi, you're now recognized for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Towns, Ranking Member Chaffetz, our own Congresswoman Norton, members of the committee. As you pointed out, I am Natavaram Gandhi, Chief Financial Officer for the district, and I'm here to testify today and wholeheartedly endorse expanding the authority of the district to manage its own financial affairs. Not only do I believe that the district's elected leadership has demonstrated its ability to adhere to principles of fiscal responsibility, I also believe that greater budget autonomy would provide the citizens of the district as well as visitors with the highest quality of public services in a timely manner. The chart that appears before you, Mr. Chairman, is a history of the remarkable fiscal comeback achieved by the district over the past dozen years. Our fiscal low points occurred in 1996 when the general fund balance hit a negative of $518 million. Through the efforts of the elected leaders and the control board, we were able repeatedly to balance the district's fiscal operations, and the control board was deactivated in 2001. Between 1996 and 2001, there was a $1 billion increase in the fund balance. But the real test for the district was the challenge of sustaining the fiscal stability in the post-control period. As you can see, at the end of 2005, the general fund balance rose another $1 billion to $1.6 billion, a turnaround of more than $2 billion. This improvement was reflected in the credit ratings assigned to the district by the major bond rating agencies. Our bond ratings, which were junk bonds in mid-90s, were upgraded to current A+ category by all 3 rating agencies simultaneously. Indeed, the turnaround by the district was faster than any major city that experienced severe fiscal distress, including Philadelphia, Cleveland, Detroit, and New York. In addition, our income tax bonds, issued for the first time in the March of this year, were assigned a rating of AAA, the highest possible rating by Standard & Poor's, and AA by Moody's and Fitch. I should note that the initial offering of $800 million of the income tax bonds has been nominated the Deal of the Year by the Bond Buyer magazine. This is a remarkable achievement for a city that was in dire financial straits only a dozen years ago. Let me note here that the district and nearly every other state and local government in the nation have been profoundly affected by financial problems because of the depth and duration of this recession. What will distinguish the district when we look back at this period is our absolute commitment to balancing our budget. Mayor Fenty, Chairman Gray, and the council reacted quickly each time there was a revenue reestimate to close the budget gaps that were created by lower forecast. I would now talk about the budget autonomy. Under the current law, all district spending is authorized by the Congress through the federal appropriation process, irrespective of the sources of the revenue. In the district 2010 proposed budget, gross budget of $8.8 billion, about $6 billion, or 68%, comes from the revenues raised through local sources. Only $188 million in federal payments were specifically requested from federal sources. The balance is comprised of formula-based federal grants which are available to all jurisdictions nationwide. I would argue that only the federal payments that are specifically and uniquely earmarked for the district should be appropriated by the Congress. If the district council were able to set its own schedule to enact a budget, the mayor and the legislature could always rely upon revenue estimate based on more current data. Currently, the budgets are based in large part on revenue estimates completed in February, some 7 months before the start of the new fiscal year in October, and total of 20 months before the end of the fiscal year. The district does not get actual data on how accurate these revenue estimates are and whether budget expenditures are fully covered until after the end of the fiscal year, almost 2 years later than the budget estimates were provided to beginning. In summary, the district's leadership has the will and the necessary resources to make informed decisions, and district has proven record of functioning in a fiscally responsible manner. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my remarks. I would be delighted to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Rivlin, you're now recognized for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And thank you for holding this hearing. I'm happy to be here to discuss greater autonomy for the District of Columbia. I strongly support both the bills before you, but I will confine my remarks to the budget autonomy. I believe that greater autonomy for the District of Columbia is a test of the seriousness of Congress's commitment to democracy. The United States is justifiably proud of our democratic tradition. We send our finest young men and women to faraway places to fight and die for democratic ideals. Our national leaders advocate democracy around the world. But right here at home, Congress apparently doubts that the citizens of the District of Columbia can be trusted to elect leaders who will make wise decisions about local policy, even about how to spend our own locally collected tax revenue. When Congress passed the Home Rule Act in 1973, it retained ultimate control over D.C. legislation, budgeting, and borrowing. At that time, congressional skepticism was understandable. The citizens of the district had been ruled like colonial subjects for a long time and had no experience with electoral politics or self-government. And the inexperience showed when the city faced fiscal crisis in 1995. But I believe that the Congress, working with the Clinton administration, and took the necessary and appropriate action when it created the D.C. Financial Resources Management and Assistance Authority, that was its real name, better known as the Control Board. That same legislation created an independent office of the Chief Financial Officer, a much-needed contribution to strengthening fiscal oversight in the district. As the CFO has said, Control Board actions supported by the City Council, combined with an improving economy, turned the district's budget outlook from dismal to positive in a very short time. Young democracies learn from their mistakes, and the District of Columbia government has amply demonstrated in recent years that it learned from the experience of the 1990s and is able to manage its own resources responsibly. It has balanced its budget every year since the control period ended and earned clean audits, albeit with some expressions of concern from the auditors from time to time. It has built up a large fund balance and significant cash reserves. Growing Wall Street respect for the district's financial management has been reflected in increasingly favorable ratings for its general obligation bonds and a AAA rating for its recent income tax backed bond issue, as the CFO has noted. Now is the time for Congress to show its commitment to democratic government by trusting the citizens of the District of Columbia through their elected officials to handle their own fiscal affairs without interference or delay from Congress. In fact, in recent years, Congress has interfered far less than it used to in districts' budgets and tried to accommodate the district's needs by keeping district appropriations from getting caught in lengthy disputes over federal spending bills that drag on long after the budget year has begun. This confidence is reassuring, but it should be reflected in law. If H.R. 1045, the District of Columbia Budget Autonomy Act of 2009, were enacted, district officials could design their own process for coming to budget decisions. Once a budget reflecting spending out of its own revenues was passed by the council and signed by the mayor, it could not be altered by Congress or delayed by the congressional appropriations process. Budget autonomy for the district is a win-win for the district and the federal government, as well as a demonstration of national confidence in the democratic process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.